We arrived in the new galaxy with a symphony. Our ships did not cut through the void in grim silence. They tumbled and broadcast and sang. Our first signals were not threats. They were the poetry of a species overjoyed to be alive. We sent out the frantic energy of our rock music. We transmitted the quiet beauty of our paintings. We even shared the ridiculous memes that made us laugh. Our star drives hummed with a joyful noise. We were explorers who loved a good party. And the universe was the greatest party we had ever seen. Every new star was a reason to celebrate. Every strange planet a cause for wonder. We were loud, we were messy, we were unbearably, wonderfully human. We found 100 worlds to call our own. Each colony was a new verse in our grand song. We filled the silence of space with chatter and debate. We filled it with the cries of newborn babies. We filled it with the arguments of old lovers. Our laughter carried through the endless night. For a long time, there was no answer. The star systems seemed empty of advanced life. We thought we were alone in this great expanse, a lonely, boisterous child in a quiet house. We were wrong. The house was not empty. Its owner had just been sleeping, and it did not like being woken up. Then we met them. They appeared without a sound at the edge of our newest colony. Their ships were not made of metal. They looked like polished black stone. They were vast and silent as tombs. There were no lights, no viewports, no sign of any life within. They absorbed the light of the nearby star. They did not hail us. They did not answer our frantic calls. They just watched. We learned their name from a terrified species on a nearby moon, a species they had silenced 1,000 years ago. They were the sorrowful ascendancy. They were ancient, they were powerful, and they were utterly grim. Their empire was a monument to silence. For eons they had moved through the stars. They imposed a smothering peace, a peace of the grave. They believed emotion was a cosmic disease, a chaotic flaw in the universe's design. Joy was a sickness. Grief was a disorder. Love was a madness. And our arrival was a plague. Our laughter was a scream in their silent cathedral. Our vibrant, emotional noise was a declaration of war. They saw our happiness not as a strength, but as a wretched flaw to be corrected. Their silent ships were a promise. The correction was coming. Their first message was not a broadcast. It was an intrusion. A cold thought slid into the mind of every human in the galaxy. There was no voice, just pure, dispassionate meaning. It felt like ice water in the soul. The message was simple. It was an ultimatum. It listed our crimes against cosmic order. The crime of song, the crime of art, the crime of hope. But our greatest offense was the most simple, the crime of laughter. They called it the sound of madness, a pointless explosion of chaotic energy. They gave us a single standard cycle to comply. We were to cease all emotional broadcasts. Our communications were to become purely functional. Our art was to be erased. Our music was to be forgotten. We were to become as quiet as them. Still, silent, empty. Failure to comply would result in our extinguishment. The debate aboard our flagship, the Resilience, was brief. It was perhaps the shortest debate in human history. To be silent was to be not human. To give up our songs and our stories, that was not living. That was just existing. It was an answer so obvious, it barely needed saying. Our fleet admiral stood before the main screen. The faces of every colony leader stared back. They were scared, they were angry, but they were not quiet. The admiral did not make a grand speech. She simply smiled a tired, defiant smile. Then she began to chuckle. It started small. a low rumble of amusement. Then it grew. Soon, the entire bridge crew was laughing. A wild, rebellious sound. It was the laughter of people with nothing left to lose. It was the laughter of a species that stared into the void and told a joke. That was our answer. We took that sound, our unified, defiant laughter, and we broadcast it, on every channel, aimed directly at their silent fleet. Their response was not fire and thunder. It was something far worse. On our colony world, Kepler 18, the change began. It was a beautiful place, a world of vast green oceans and soaring mountains, a world filled with 20 million souls, 20 million voices. And then, one by one, the voices went out. A mother singing to her child suddenly stopped. Her mouth hung open, the melody gone. A marketplace full of raucous bargaining fell dead silent. A musician's fingers froze over his instrument. It was not a sound wave. It was a psychic shroud, a weapon that did not kill the body. It murdered the soul. The hush, they called it. A field of pure emotional negation. It smothered every feeling. Joy, anger, fear, love, all gone. Replaced by a profound, horrifying emptiness. People moved like automatons. Their eyes were blank. Their minds were silent. They were alive, but they were no longer living. The sorrowful ascendancy had shown us their power. They could turn our music into a silent scream. But they made a mistake. They left an observer on Kepler 18. Its purpose was to monitor the hush, to study its perfect, silent efficiency. The observer wore a human form, a flawless disguise. It walked through the unnaturally quiet streets. It saw the blank faces, the empty eyes. To the observer, this was harmony. This was peace. It entered a park. Children sat on swings, unmoving. They did not laugh. They did not cry. They simply existed. The observer felt a sense of rightness. The chaos was tamed. The sickness was cured. But it missed one. A small girl, no older than 5. She had been hiding in a hollow log, playing a game. The hush had not fully reached her tiny, shielded mind. The girl crawled out. She saw a bright red ball lying in the grass. Her face lit up with a sudden, pure delight. She ran to it. She picked it up. And she let out a single, piercing giggle. It was not a loud sound, but in the crushing silence of the world, it was a thunderclap. The observer's head snapped toward the noise. It had never heard such a thing, not raw, not unfiltered. The giggle struck its ancient, ordered mind. It was a note of music in a symphony of silence. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the observer felt something other than stillness. It felt confusion. The stone began to crack. Our continued defiance was intolerable to them. The incident on Kepler 18 was meant to be a lesson, a demonstration of their power. But we did not learn. We mourned our silenced colony. Then we broadcasted our grief. We turned our sorrow into poetry. We sent it into the void. A new song, laced with pain, but a song nonetheless. This was the final insult. Our ability to turn even their weapon into a form of expression. The sorrowful ascendancy determined that we were not just sick. We were incurable. The only solution was eradication. So they gathered their great fleet. From the dark corners of the galaxy, the stone ships came. Thousands of them. A fleet of silent tombs. They blotted out the stars as they moved. They did not burn fuel. They seemed to move by bending space itself. A silent, unstoppable tide of darkness. Their destination was clear. Earth, the home world, the source of the emotional plague they were sworn to destroy. They were coming to impose a final, perfect silence upon the heart of humanity. But the galaxy was not as empty as they believed. It was just quiet. For millennia, other star nations had lived under the Ascendancy's thumb. The Cathar, a race of proud warriors, now lived in silent shame. The Lumina, beings of pure energy, were forced to dim their inner light. They had been cowed into submission long ago. They had forgotten what it was to feel. Then they saw our broadcasts. First the laughter, then the grief. They saw our tiny, noisy fleet standing against the silent armada. They saw a species that refused to be quiet. Our defiance was a spark in their long, dark night. A dangerous thought began to spread. A whisper passed through forgotten channels. They watched the great stone fleet move toward Earth. They knew we had no chance. Our ships were toys. Our weapons were firecrackers. But for the first time in ages, they felt a ghost of an emotion. It was not quite hope. It was a flicker of morbid curiosity. They watched, wondering what sound we would make when we were finally extinguished. The observer from Kepler 18 was recalled to the fleet. Its mind was a mess. The child's giggle had shattered its composure. It was a flaw, a dissonant element in their perfect psychic harmony. The Ascendancy's network was a single, unified consciousness. Every member was a note in a silent song. But the observer was now a wrong note. Its confusion was a low hum of psychic static. It radiated out to the ships nearby. Commanders felt it, a flicker of something that did not belong, an itch in the back of their serene minds. They had no word for it. They had erased the concept of doubt from their language. But they felt it, a question they could not ask. The perfect unity of the fleet began to fray at the edges. The wrong note from the observer created a subtle discord, a tiny vibration in the monolith of their certainty. Their approach to Earth slowed by a fraction. They were searching for the source of the dissonance, the flaw in their perfect logic. They had no idea the flaw was the first echo of our victory. We watched their fleet grow on our long-range scanners. It was a wall of blackness coming to end us. Our military command was grim. Ship for ship, they outclassed us 1,000 to 1. Their weapons could crack planets. Ours could barely scratch their stone hulls. A conventional battle was not just unwinnable. It was suicide. Panic started to set in on some worlds. But on Earth, a strange calm settled over us. We had faced extinction before. We had pulled ourselves back from the brink many times. This was just another Tuesday, on a cosmic scale. A joke passed around the command center. If we were going to die, we were going to go out loud. That joke sparked an idea. A wild, desperate, wonderfully human idea. We could not fight them with ships. We could not fight them with guns. So we would fight them with the one weapon they could not understand. We would not aim for their hulls. We would aim for their minds. We would fight them with our culture, our spirit, our noise. We began our final great work. Every satellite dish, every transmitter on every human world turned away from the stars. They turned toward us. We began to broadcast, not outward, but inward. We gathered our greatest treasures, the treasures the Ascendancy sought to destroy. We gathered the symphonies of Beethoven and the driving rhythm of the blues. We took the soaring speeches of our greatest leaders. We took the whispered words of a lover. We recorded the sound of waves on a beach, the roar of a crowd at a championship game, the cry of a soldier seeing home for the first time, the pure, unthinking laughter of a child. We wove it all together. Every piece of art, every moment of profound feeling, every stupid joke, every heartbreaking tragedy, every triumph. We created a single, massive broadcast. a wave of pure, concentrated humanity. We called it the Symphony for the Starless Void, and we aimed this weapon of the soul at the heart of their approaching fleet. The fleet of the sorrowful ascendancy entered our solar system. 1,000 stone ships in perfect silent formation. They prepared to deliver the hush to our home world, to silence us forever. And then our symphony hit them. It was not a wave of energy. It was not a psychic attack. It was a flood. It washed over their unified consciousness. 1 billion new experiences slammed into their sterile minds at once. The feeling of a first kiss, the sharp tang of regret, the quiet pride of a parent, the irrational joy of dancing, the bitter sting of betrayal. Concepts they had no framework for, sensations they had long forgotten, their perfect formation shattered. Ships drifted aimlessly. On their bridges, the ascendancy crews stood frozen. One commander felt the sorrow of a forgotten poem and began to weep, though it did not know why. Another felt the righteous anger of a protest song and clenched its fists. Their rigid command chain snapped. The silent harmony became a cacophony of feeling. Their greatest strength, their unity, was broken by a storm of emotion. The leader of the sorrowful ascendancy was called the Prime Sorrow. It was an ancient being, so old it had watched stars be born and die. It existed on the flagship, a vast cathedral of stone. It felt the chaos erupt through its fleet. It felt the foreign emotions tearing its people apart. It was a plague of feeling, just as it had feared. At first, it shielded its own mind. It tried to restore order. It sent out psychic commands of calm, of stillness, of silence. But they were drowned out by our symphony. The laughter and the tears and the music were too strong. Its fleet was lost in a storm of confusion. So the Prime Sorrow made a choice. It would confront this weapon directly. It dropped its psychic shields. It opened its mind fully to our broadcast. The full, unrestrained force of human experience slammed into it. The love, the hate, the despair, the hope. It saw 1 billion lives in a single instant. It felt 1 billion hearts beat as one. And then, through the storm, it heard one single sound clearly. The giggle of a small child playing with a red ball. It was not an attack. It was an invitation. The attack on Earth stopped. The great stone ships ceased their advance. They drifted in the darkness of space. Their crews were not dead. They were simply lost. They were toddlers in a world of new, overwhelming senses. They struggled with feelings their culture had denied for millions of years. The war was over. But we had not won. Not in the way we understood victory. The Prime Sorrow withdrew its consciousness from the symphony. Its mind was not broken. It was expanded, changed. The certainty that had guided it for eons was gone, replaced by a vast, echoing question. It sent one final message. Not an ultimatum, not a threat. It was a single, psychic query broadcast to all of humanity. The thought was simple. It was unadorned. It carried no malice, only a profound, shattering confusion. What? It asked the listening stars. What is this sound? The war ended not with a bang. It ended with the first truly honest question the sorrowful ascendancy had asked in an age. We did not conquer the galaxy. We did not destroy our enemies. We confused them into a truce. We answered the Prime Sorrow's question. We kept our symphony broadcasting on an open channel, an eternal invitation to feel. The fleet of the ascendancy did not flee. It retreated in slow, perfect silence, not in defeat, but in the grip of a deep, unsettling introspection. They had to understand this new, maddening sound. The other races of the galaxy saw it. They saw the great fleet turn back. They heard our unending broadcast, the laughter, the music, the noise. The silence of the galaxy had been broken. A new power had arrived, not one of fleets and armies, but one of spirit and song. Our laughter became an echo in the stars. It did not carry threats. It carried an idea. The idea that feeling was not a sickness, that joy was not a flaw. We taught the old silent stars a new song. And slowly, cautiously, other voices began to join the chorus. The universe was still a vast, dark place, but it was a little less quiet now. And it was no longer afraid of a good laugh.